Republicans are choosing their words carefully after a jury found former President Donald Trump liable for sexual abuse and defamation of E. Jean Carroll. But one Republican who has no problem speaking out about and against the former president is our next guest. Joining me now, Republican presidential candidate and former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson. Governor, thank you for being here. When you heard that verdict today, what was your reaction?
Well, I've trained as a lawyer. I've practiced law for 25 years. And anytime a jury comes back with a verdict, I respect the verdict of the jury. Jury verdicts reflect the community. They reflect America. And they also have weighed, as no one else has, the credibility of the witnesses and the truth of the allegations. And they found unanimously that the allegations of a sexual assault were true. And so I believe we all as a society and as Republicans ought to take that jury verdict very seriously. To do otherwise undermines our system of justice, which is second to none in the world. And also, it's just simply a reflection of continued indefensible conduct by former President Donald Trump. That's what it means to me.
There are other Republicans that would potentially like the Republican nomination, potentially Nikki Haley, potentially Tim Scott. Why don't you think any of them are taking the similar position that you are? A former president found liable of sexual abuse.
Well, they'll have to address that. But to me, it's important to speak the truth. It's important to lead. It's important to guide. And it's important to respect, again, this system of justice that we have. And we've seen too much from leaders that undermine both our criminal justice system, but also our civil justice system. And here's an example of where the jury system worked. You had defense lawyers there. You had the cross-examination of witnesses, and the jury determines truth. We ought to have some respect for that. And so, to me, it's serious again. And, you know, the public is going to decide this issue, and it's all going to be decided at the ballot box. But I'm running for President of the United States because I believe that I'm the leader that this country needs, and that the Republican Party needs to have a different nominee than Donald Trump. It's as simple as that.
Respect, decency, a party that says they're the party of family values. One would think they would find this reprehensible. I want to share what Republican Senator John Cornyn said when he would ask how this would impact Trump's campaign. Watch this.
I'm not sure it really has any effect on his candidacy, per se.
What about Republicans choosing to take in the Senate if he's the nominee? Is that a hurt?
Well, I mean, I think we have such a great map. I think there's a good opportunity to pick up at least 3 seats, no matter if he runs or not. But the fact is, I do not think he can win the presidency. And so I think regardless of what you think about him as an individual, to me, electability is the sole criterion.
You don't think that Trump could be elected president again?
I don't think so.
So he's saying he could not win in a general election, but like so many others, he said this won't bother the base. Who is the Republican base today if they would be A-OK with this?
Well, I think it will bother many in the base, but it also depends on what people say about it and how they approach it. And for example,
what does that mean, what they say about it and how they approach it?
Donald Trump is going to say this is old, these are false. It's a crooked system, or it's a fixed system. Well, some will buy into that, but I think whenever you have leaders like myself that speak out, Senator Cornyn, it does make a difference. And whenever we uphold the rule of law, when we talk about how important it is in our society, it makes sense to people. And so this is a time for leadership. It's a time for setting the differences and the right tone in America. And that's what I hope that I'm doing, and setting out a contrast that's there. I believe it makes a difference for the Republican base, and I think that they're going to evaluate both the electability side of it, but also the rightness side of it. And do the Americans believe that the allegations are true? Probably most of them do, just like the jury did. Some will excuse it. I don't believe it's excusable and defensible.
Let's talk about that contrast, because on Friday I sat down with President Biden and I asked him, right now people are assuming it could be a matchup, Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. And I asked him, what is the difference between the two of them? Here's what he said. What's the difference between the two of you?
everything. Everything. Everything.
He clearly says everything. You're making a case against Donald Trump. What is the case for you? Who's your voter? Who's your base?
Well, it's Republicans. I've been a consistent conservative. Whenever you look at my record, Arkansas, of lowering taxes, growing the economy, improving education, these are Republican principles. I left a $2 billion surplus. This is what Republicans do. We lead and we solve problems. And so I'm second to none in terms of a consistent conservative record, but also a vision for the future, and one that is filled with optimism and the strength of America in the global stage. That, to me, is the Republican Party. It's my record, and it's the future of America, and we need that kind of leadership. You mentioned President Biden, and I'm running against him for president. And I believe that we need a change in policy, the direction that President Biden has taken us. And so let's hopefully get away from all of the distractions in this campaign and talk about border security, energy policy, talk about the debt and the spending in Washington, D.C., and balanced budget. These are things we need to be talking about. I hope that we can. We need to eliminate some of the distractions.
Right now, two main things that seem to be a focus for Republicans is this near or total abortion ban and permitless carry around guns. They seem to be deeply unpopular with a national voter in a general audience. Where do you stand on those two issues?
Well, I'm pro-life. And whenever you look at restrictions on abortion, I support those if there's reasonable exceptions. And I believe that's where a vast majority of Americans are, that they don't want abortion up to time of birth. They want restrictions on it, but they also want reasonable exceptions. Right now, it's at the state level. I expect it actually to stay there, so each state will make their own determination, because I don't believe we will have the depth of Democrat majorities in the House and Senate and the presidency. I think it'll probably be divided. And so it leaves it with the states. And so each state will make the determination. I'm pro-life. And I think we've got to message it very carefully so that we do support those moms with risky pregnancies and adoption services.
This sort of sounds like that Republican Party that people were accustomed to for years and years. Even during the Trump presidency, we would hear within Republican circles, people were longing for that George Bush-style president. When you announced, though, there were no Republican lawmakers from your state, whether it's the current governor, your two senators. There aren't Republican lawmakers who have endorsed you at this point. Why is that?
Well, it's early, and I have a great deal
Donald Trump has gotten endorsements already. Well,
yes, he has, and some of them are changing as well. And so it's very fluid. You make your case, you make your arguments, and in Arkansas is a good example where Donald Trump in 2020 carried it 60+%. It's one of the most red states in America. And so I'm going against the grain. I believe it's important, and I think that I'll ultimately win. But we've got to make our case. We've got a long ways to go.
If you don't, will you endorse him as the Republican nominee?
Well, I expect to be on the debate stage. I think there's other ways to do that. I think it's a little bit early. I don't like party loyalty oaths. I don't like them for Democrats, don't like them for Republicans. So let's see how that develops. I expect someone other than Donald Trump to be our nominee, and I certainly want to support the Republican nominee.
Governor Asa Hutchinson, thank you so much for being here.